Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction, Katerina. I don't know if we are going to be able to talk about this or about the car or something like that. But, so we are already presented, by Katerina. So I would go around the table and ask everyone to present himself for maybe 3 minutes or so. So I would start with Tommaso.
Hello. Hello everyone. Long time no see. It's good to be here again. I'm not going to repeat everything about myself, but I think I will add maybe some flavor. Again, my name is Tommaso Astazi, and I've been working in Brussels since 2019 with the Blockchain for Europe Association. And just to again clarify a bit what we do, right? Blockchain for Europe was born in 2018, just at the same time as the European Commission started to think about MiCA, right? Started to think about the crypto regulatory framework that I talked about earlier. And the association was born because of that, to call for a regulatory framework that would introduce legal certainty and finally make sure that Europe will take the lead in this Web3 race, right? So as we talk about this other super interesting question today, I will, of course, link it back to what I was talking about earlier, and generally with the work that we have been doing in terms of education in Brussels, right? So on how do we talk about certain topics that are technically very complicated sometimes, how do we make them easier for both users to understand them and be a bit more acquainted with them and feel safer when they use them, but also with regulators and policymakers, as they are the ones creating regulation for these technologies. So I think that's just a tiny bit of a additional intro, but very happy to be talking about this topic today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So then, Martinho.
Sure. So starting from a bit of a background, I took software engineering at university, and back in 2015, still a university student, I started listening about cryptos as maybe there are some researchers that are using the university facilities to mine, and they are making a lot of money. Now, I didn't have access to anything of the sort, but I started understanding a bit more about cryptocurrencies, and so that's why in 2018 I joined what was uTrust, and uTrust was a crypto payment platform that allowed businesses to seamlessly start accepting crypto payments in a way that on their end they still could receive in stable currencies such as euros, US dollars, or stable coins. And as part of uTrust journey that I joined in 2018 as a product manager, we ended up selling the company to Elrond, and Elrond is one of the biggest chains in terms of efficiency and scalability. And so we rebranded along with Elrond to MultiverseX, and so now I'm the person in charge of xMoney crypto side. And still the premise is on allowing businesses to seamlessly accept crypto payments. We are mostly based in Portugal, and we are a VASP in Portugal and in Estonia. So with MiCA, hopefully that's going to be simplified, though until it's simplified with a lot of challenges. And so that's part of the premise. In our end, we are focused on the businesses, so how can we bring businesses to start accepting crypto payments? And thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you. And so last but certainly not the least, Antony.
Thank you everyone, and great to be here. So I started in blockchain back in 2016. Previous to that, I've been career in retail for 20 odd years. And I thought, what's this Bitcoin thing? What's the Ethereum had just launched? What is this all about, or is about to launch? Excuse me, and I thought, this can actually transform everything we do. So everything I approach around blockchain is very practical. I decided to join Oracle Corporation, where I looked after the launch of Oracle Blockchain as a Service, lot lineage, track and trace, some of the early stage use cases. And then moved to DXC Technology, where I looked after the global blockchain practice for around about 50 projects we did. So that's like 2019, 2020. So it's actually quite a lot happening in enterprise, which most people didn't really see. A lot of those projects failed. for different reasons, often because they were using a Hyperledger Fabric, which is not particularly a blockchain. It's an interesting spin on a blockchain. I decided to then go into crazy crypto world and join NEM Protocol and launch Symbol Platform, which was an amazing experience. It literally was from corporate life to insane crypto life. I can't explain how insane it was. And we launched the chain with $1 billion valuation, which was like off the scale. It's probably worth about 50 million now, I think. So don't look at XYM, the ticker. But during that process, the whole point of Symbol was public, private, and sort of trying to bridge the gap between a public, public pure blockchain like Ethereum, Bitcoin, and then the Hyperledger Fabric Corda world, which is an internal one. It doesn't get the full benefits. That project closed down due to the crazy crypto world, and basically the founders, or not the founders, but the core devs deciding they didn't want to do business with corporates, which they had an enterprise blockchain and corporates sort of in the name. But anyway, I just moved to Portugal, and I was like, right, it's summer, I'm just going to stay on the beach. As you can tell, I don't spend any time on the beach. So I then joined Ripple. So I was working on and off with Ripple for a few other things. And basically the VP, James, said, look, I need someone to run the CBDC practice, central bank digital currencies, and spend your time going around the world talking to central bankers. So for the last 3 years until summer this year, I was spending a lot of time talking to central bankers and commercial banks about CBDCs and stablecoins, which was hard work, a lot of regulatory world, off the scale regulatory, but also they're trying to do the right thing, so I'll talk a bit more about that tomorrow. I left in summer because what I worked out was that the adoption of blockchain, bearing in mind I've done this for 8 years now, and I thought everybody would be using it and I'd be a billionaire and I'd be like Ronaldo and just can buy what I want. But it's still adopting and still happening, and for me it's all about how to make it, the adoption happen. So we've set up a joint venture company with a tech company in Lithuania, which is Enterprise Go Digital, and we're all about sort of digital asset solutions which actually work. So the platforms where you can start to use things. One's a collectible platform, and the other one's a digital currency platform, which I'll talk about tomorrow. And the final little part, I launched a book in 2020, just before COVID, bad timing, commercializing blockchain, and that was all about real uses of blockchain. So everything I've ever done is about real use of blockchain. It's interesting, probably, if you guys read the book now, the people in the room, you'd probably be like, yeah, know this. But outside this room, even though the book's 4 years old, people go, wow, this is amazing. So it's interesting how the industry's moved forward, but it's still got a long way to go. And I think onboarding millions of users is really where we need to get to.
Okay, thank you very much. So I didn't want to do introduction, but let me just tell me something funny about me, okay? So I'm a professor and a researcher, so my good times are passed with students, with smart people, students, discussing interesting things. But I work in this area for many years. I did my PhD 20-something years ago. At the time, there was no blockchain, and there was no Bitcoin also. But there was something called Byzantine fault tolerance and intrusion tolerance. So we wanted to design systems that were dependable, secure, and so on, even if some of the parts of the system were attacked. Okay, and of course, consensus was an extremely important building block of that. Okay. And at the time, we were mostly focused on that, on things like scalability and so on of consensus algorithms. And we disregarded a very important thing, big mistake. Okay, we disregarded the applications, and that was what caused the success of blockchain some years later. And we also disregard the thing that brings us today, that these things are supposed to be used by normal people. Okay, we want people to use them, not computers. Okay, so that's the topic of this discussion today. Okay, and thinking about the question that we had in mind. Okay, I think we have 2 steps. Okay, one is people are already attracted by the area. Okay, because they saw some people people become rich and they think, and they thought, well, I would also like to be rich. Okay, so maybe I want to enter this area. Okay, but after some years and lots of people discovering that they didn't get rich, and some people even get poor because of the area. Okay, so I think that excitement is a bit passing. Okay, so my first question for the table, okay, would be. How can we convince, I don't know, 1 million users or so to join this crypto area in the next month? Okay, I don't know if it's in the next month. Okay, but how can we convince people to join? Okay, that we are doing the right thing, that they will get something for joining the area. I would probably mix this. Maybe I would start maybe with Martinho.
Sure. So I think we frequently try to get a lot of people to come into a space like crypto, especially because we are incentivized to do so. And part of that premise, which Miguel was just talking about now, was that if we are able to get more people to join into crypto and more people to invest into crypto, crypto is going to grow. Not so much so that they have a clear benefit other than the investment part. And if we try to separate this from the actual value, we never ask, how can we bring 1 million users to start using AI? ChatGPT, how many users did it get in one day? So usually from my perspective, it's more about, do we have the benefits and for whom do we have the benefits? And maybe currently, though blockchain in theory allows us to have a lot of use cases, maybe currently we do not have the proper benefits to say that everyone in the world should be using and being onboarded to blockchain. Maybe at some point they will, but in a way that's so abstracted that they will not know from that perspective of infrastructure. Like, I wouldn't need to know that ChatGPT is AI. I would need to know that ChatGPT allows me, just like any other LLM, to get to a level of responses that I would not be able to get in another system. From that point of view, for example, from my experience in terms of payments, crypto payments have clear benefits when we're talking about cross-borders. We are talking about cross-border large payments. We are talking about supply chain. We are talking intercontinental. In those cases, I can list you the clear benefits that businesses being onboarded into crypto would have. And right now, there are some blockers. But when those blockers are no longer present, and those blockers in some cases, or that regulations are not clear, but now they start becoming, I can guarantee that at some point, there's going to be millions using crypto from the perspective of payments. But I don't see it as most of us here that have euros or dollars, we don't have a clear benefit in making payments in crypto. We might be incentivized to do so if we consider that we might be profiting from tokenomics type of systems, but those are always temporary. And so to me, it's more about what benefits and to whom those benefits we can get. And then if we talk about those specific groups, we wouldn't be talking about how to get them into crypto or blockchain. We'd be talking about how to get them into this product or how to get them this value. And a lot of that to me is that shift of presence, which when we talk about investment, that's not the goal. And a lot of this is a bit chaotic, where we try to talk about benefits and blockchain, and at the end of the day, people care about is the investment part. And while we are at that stage, things don't work out well. And I do think and agree that this chaos is starting to subside in some degrees, but still it's present, and the benefits is where it's at.
Okay, thank you. So maybe Antony?
Yeah, so I think to answer that question exactly, I think Donald Trump has probably already done that in the last week. so whether good or bad and whether it's seamlessly. So I think if you take the crypto side and the blockchain side as separate, as Martina was saying. So I think on the crypto side, it's one of those things, if people want to get into it, if they think it's an investment now, which is obviously where Bitcoin talks about and where, you know, the noise is being made for the Bitcoin strategic reserve and that side of it, good or bad, indifferent, it's a different discussion, but that gets people interested in it. So I think that's the first part of crypto, just starting to talk about it as a use and for an investment. And then the second part, and I'm always going to look at Tommaso, you're like the regulator, that's it now. It's always his fault.
I'm the regulator from now on.
But it's then the regulation side of that. So if we get clear regulations, clear, okay, that Bitstamp, that Coinbase, whatever is okay, and that you can use it and put in and out, then that's brilliant. So I think those happen, and to be honest, it's easy to open a Bitstamp account or Coinbase now. So the seamlessly part for crypto is actually, I don't think it's in a bad place now. I think with Trump, and what's happening there, with regulations being okay, so that actually most of this is okay, Bitstamp and the rest of them. Although you can't send money from Bitstamp to Wise and Wise to Bitstamp. Ask the regulator why. So there's still things like that which are ridiculous, and hopefully they'll be ironed out in the next few years. But also you get an app and you use it. Blockchain itself, though, is everything else. And, if you look at my book, there's one chapter on crypto, and I didn't even want to do that. The rest of it's about blockchain. So, supply chain, identity. The identity stuff that we talked about is immense. The whole point of a blockchain is around immutable transactions, sharing data in an easy-to-use way, cross borders, cross anything. So, a great example is always the healthcare records, Whose healthcare records are not in this country? Well, we're on an island, so I don't think anybody's here apart from the Madeira people, right? So if you get ill here, something serious happens, nobody knows anything about your health. Nobody can help you apart from, the doctors using their experience. They can't go, okay, so this person's had an operation or has this illness. You should be able to access that easily wherever you are, or the doctor or the nurse, whoever. It should be like a fingerprint on an app that says, right, these are all the illnesses, this person or operation, so they can go, wow, this is why they're having a heart attack or whatever emergency is. That is what blockchain can do. It's massively powerful. And so once we get to that stage where it happens, you wouldn't even be talking about it as a person. It would be seamless because you'd be your hospital records and you just need your fingerprint or whatever it is to access it. So again, Martino said is, once blockchain becomes not talked about, and we don't talk about onboarding people, and it's just what you use it for. Another great example is in Dubai, where property purchases and things are recorded on blockchain in certain areas and certain parts of it. In Colombia, we did a project with the Colombian government where some of the land registry for territories that are questionable, let's call it, and where that was recorded onto blockchain. And therefore you knew who was buying it and how you're selling it. They didn't talk about blockchain. This was a government project, labelled as a government project, and it had nothing to do with blockchain. There was a certificate. So the people knew, they just got a certificate. They just did things. So I think that, for me, making blockchain not a word, not talked about, is probably the best way to get to seamlessness.
Thank you. Antony, you want to have something to say from the regulation part?
Yeah,
no.
I mean, I have to say, I agree with most that has been said so far. It really often goes back to the whole point of, do we actually need to explain everything that is behind an app, right? Whether once the app is just good and cool and easy to use, we don't really need to know what is behind the apps that we're using on our phones. Most people don't know that, and so that's also, I think, the level of understanding that we should be somehow expecting when talking about blockchain-based apps. Simply, users are going to be attracted by what they're getting out of it, by the value, by the service that they're going to be able to use, not by the fact that it's blockchain-based. So this is absolutely on point. I think not a criticism, but a self-reflection that we need to have in this industry. We shouldn't, when we're talking about onboarding users, the main point, the focus point is, what are we delivering to them? What is the real world problem that we are addressing with this new product, with this new solution, with this new technology? Then when we go back to my friends in Brussels, the regulators and the policymakers, that's a tiny bit different, because at the same time, it's not like they need to understand everything perfectly, but there needs to be a bit more of an understanding of what the characteristics of the technology are, because it's based on those that you then need to address certain risks that are existing, or you actually understand that certain risks are already mitigated by the technology itself, right? So in our job, obviously, education is one of the main priorities, whether that's, again, towards regulators or towards the more general public. And I think then, in that sense, again, my co-panelists already touched upon it, they already did it for me, but I think the point that I obviously wanted to make is that MiCA, or generally speaking, the regulatory frameworks that are being introduced in Europe, are meant to help also on the onboarding side, right? Because let's think about FTX, right? I'm sure that there is some people here in the room that have lost some money with FTX, myself, first of all, not that much, don't worry. But still, that is exactly a good example of this mistrust that has been created in some services, in some products, in some platforms. And so I know the technology, and so when FTX happened, I knew that it was not a blockchain issue, right? It was just a fraud of the most traditional type. But many other people, my friends, my relatives and so on, once they saw that, they saw, oh, there you go. You see, crypto is a scam, right? Crypto is a scam, has always been, you stole our money, why are you doing this to us? Like, no, don't worry, like, this is not a crypto scam, this is literally just a fraud. But they don't know, they don't understand that. And so these issues, these situations, these developments, of course, create a huge mistrust into users, right? The next time that they're gonna be signing up onto a platform that looks like FTX, they're gonna think twice. Well, now, with regulation, we would probably have avoided such a big disaster as FTX, and this is exactly what we're trying to do in Europe, to create a system, a framework where these entities that are operating are regulated, are authorized, are licensed, and users know that they can use them safely. And so those are the two main points I wanted to bring up for now. I think generally speaking then, when we talk about onboarding, again, it's about use cases, right? It's about understanding what will be the killer app, the killer use case that will bring all of us, all of our grandmothers to literally be using this app without even noticing, without knowing that they're using blockchain. But that's what we're waiting for. And I think some of these topics were mentioned already, but I think really what's going to be this killer use case might be something, again, connected to our healthcare systems, our digital identity and credentials, right? The whole point about how do we use our credentials, national credentials, certificates, diplomas, licenses that we have in our countries. We are all moving, we're all expats, we're all living in different countries from the one that we are, from, and this would be probably one of these use cases that will make people's lives so much easier in such a concrete way that will really bring a lot of people to use these services. And to be honest, then when I think about the killer use case, the killer app, what I'm imagining is something related to our social media platforms, just because of how much time we all spend on social medias. Once we're gonna have these, I don't know, blockchain-based, there is some examples out there, of course, you might know some of them, but like once we have these blockchain-based social media platforms that actually work and people start using, that could be a really interesting, pull factor to bring a lot of people to finally share their pictures there rather than on Instagram, for example.
Okay, thank you very much. So my second question was really the topic of the panel, which is how can we onboard millions of users seamlessly? And I think there are two important words here, okay? One is users, okay? Not companies, because many things that happen in the area are companies trying to work with companies. But how can we engage normal people, okay? People that have smartphones, that maybe they have a laptop, or maybe they don't have a laptop. They are not experts in computer science. They don't understand what authentication is. They don't know what plugins for Chrome is. They don't know what Chrome is. Okay, they cannot separate the web from the internet. Okay, they think this is the same thing. Okay, how can we engage these people? And seamlessly, okay, without, well, you can join the area, but you need to do a PhD before, or at least a small bachelor, okay, 3 years. So how can we do it? Maybe I would start with Antony, so let's change this time.
Yeah, I can give a couple of examples from Ripple on CBDCs, because the technology is the technology, it's a digital currency, fine. to get people to use it, it's a CBDC, right? So it's the currency of the country. So the two examples, one is Palau. So Palau is an island nation in the South Pacific. It uses the US dollar. And it's something like, can't remember the figures, there's like 80 islands or like 800, it's ridiculous. There's a lot of little islands. So actual physical cash on the island is a nightmare because you have to physically put it on a boat and take it to the people, etc. And quite often the families, you know, the mum and dad live on this island, kids on that, and the grannies on the other islands, etc. There's only 2 or 3 that actually, you know, real. But the point is, with a digital currency, which is seamless, which is just a wallet on their phone, they can all of a sudden pay for their food and drink and pay hotels. So we had 300 people in the country that tested it, and they bought coffees, spent, you know, dinners, etc. They also sent it P2P. So from me to the, you know, father to son, or, you know, grandma, etc. So they didn't have to carry the cash. There wasn't a big queue at the cash machine on the day the money arrives from the US. It doesn't arrive from the US, but in essence, you know, there's this sort of idea that the money arrives physically. So this was massive of where digital currency, blockchain technology, onboarded these people overnight because it's their currency and it's how they use it. And so, you know, that was a massive step forward of how we use it, because it's nothing to do with crypto as such. It is a dollar, it's backed for a dollar. It was on public chain, so the trial's finished, but it was actually on public chain, which was amazing for the country to allow it. Interesting for them to try and roll it out. There's issues now with regulators. So again, you know, there's still ways forward, but it was an amazing thing to see people just using the payment quickly and easily. Everybody's probably Europe or US here. Somebody goes, big thrill, I've got Wise, I've got Revolut, etc. That's not the point. One, the rest of the world, a lot of the rest of the world doesn't have that. And number 2, how much does it cost you to use Wise and all the rest of them? So while it may not cost you to send something within Europe, you know, instant payment through your bank accounts, etc., it does cost you because you pay a monthly fee. So you've got to remember it's the cost, and also it's not instant as well. So I could go into the whole world, but this is about adoption of people. The second one, Bhutan. We launched a digital currency, again, a CBDC, so it was a CBDC on a private chain in Bhutan. The interesting thing with that one, again, the people tried it, and it's a very religious country, and they normally take a perfect note to the temple on you know, whichever days they go, etc. And there's basically a kiosk at the bottom of the hill where you give them a dirty note and they give you a clean note. And that was really interesting, because that's actually where we were like, oh, we can't solve that. Because yes, the priest, you know, can take the digital currency, but that's not the point. This is a religious ceremony. You have to take that note, that legal currency, etc. So there's things there which are interesting that we need to think about, how could we do it? And we did actually use pieces of paper and QR codes, which was just awful. But, you know, it's interesting to see how that would happen and how we can do that. So you've got Palau, who would love to just have the digital currency now, and seamlessly everybody would use it. You've got Bhutan, who sits there and goes, we can't use this at the moment because we need bits of paper. So I think it's back to the reality, and then it's not one fix all. Every country, every city, every community is going to be different. So I think the final part is tailoring it to the users you actually have and how they want to use it and where they want to use it, which is what social media does. It's what your bank does. It's what your favorite app does. The reason why everybody in this room has got a different favorite app is because you are, as a person, like the way this interacts. Or, you know, if it's crypto, obviously you like to look at the figures going up at the moment. But, you know, we're all different. So I think understanding what the people need as a group, and then the individuals, and making the app or the solution perfect for that is when you then can onboard as many as you want. But it's a difficult task.
Thank you very much. Tommaso?
Yeah, I mean, besides what we've been saying, I think another important area, of course, and this is also what Antony was somehow mentioning, is really making things accessible. Right, you need to make products and services and solutions accessible and inclusive as well, because of course, otherwise, as you said, if it remains something that you still need a certain level of technical understanding to be able to use that, you're not going to onboard the masses, right? You're only going to onboard the technical experts or somehow some tech-savvy people or part of the population that is already adapted to this type of technologies and so on. To really make things accessible to everyone, then it's also, again, a job for the regulators or the policymakers that need to also keep that in mind when introducing new regulatory framework that also foster accessibility, inclusivity. And then I would say another important part is also interoperability, because otherwise we're still going to have much like smaller projects that are not interoperable with each other, and they are not going to scale and reach those that breadth of of adoption that are needed to actually be talking about millions of users using those products, right? So there is a lot to do on that as well. And again, from a regulatory perspective, generally there is a great need for international coordination, right? Also on this front. So how do we make sure that our again, regulatory approaches, but also the access to funding, opportunities for companies to develop their solutions and their products that are out there, and that really can allow these companies to innovate and provide these new solutions, which then can be brought to the masses. And there is a lot of areas. Personally speaking, I'm very interested in the whole financial inclusion piece, because that's really what, again, as Europeans, Westerners, doesn't feel as important, right, as a use case, but it is probably the one that, when we look at the word, is the one that will drive mass adoption. Is how do we bank the unbanked, right? How do we bring all of those unbanked citizens of the world into some sort of a financial system that allows them to interact with the rest of the world, to send money to each other, but also to just have access to certain services which otherwise they wouldn't, right? There is so many people, when we talk about unbanked people, it's literally people, citizens of the world, that have no access to a bank, right? They have no chance of opening a bank account. But thanks to blockchain technology, they are being included in the financial system. They're being somehow offered solutions that are easy to use, directly on their phones, they don't have barriers, they don't have to provide too many legal documents that otherwise they wouldn't be able to provide, and they still get an access, a way to interact with the rest of the world. And that, I think, is one of the most interesting area of development, and which will really bring the mass adoption that we all been waiting for a few years now.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Martinho, what is your take on the question?
So, not adding much, because I think we are quite aligned into these different topics, but giving some examples. So, in the case of everyone knows, and it's been talked about since the beginning, usability is the key, right? So we need to make the usability as seamless as possible. That's obvious. Everyone's heard about that. But from the design perspective of products, one of the analysis is that before you take into killer features, before you look into what is the extra mile that you can provide, you need to achieve basic necessities. There are some things when you go to an application that there needs to be a go back button, like that's key. There needs to be a way to log in. Okay, that's obvious and that's key. There needs to be a way to configure notifications. That's obvious. There needs to be a way to recover your password. Oh, okay, maybe if I forget my keys, maybe I don't have a way to recover. And that's, for example, a situation where until we link the identity, for example, we don't have a proper solution to the recovery problem. And it's considered a basic necessity in any application. If you have a failure of losing your keys to your ID card, if it has some electronic capabilities, you need to go in person, show yourself, and you get a new password. So this is one of the cases where we can say that there's been a lot done. Not enough has been done, though. So usability, it's not entirely there. Obviously, in a full abstraction of a Coinbase, of an exchange, yes, but are you really operating blockchain when you're dealing with a centralized exchange? For the most part, not really. And most users would not. So, and to get that level of usability, there are some basic necessities that need to be covered. The other topic is, I absolutely agree, the interoperability. We have a situation where blockchain is meant to be part of the community, and that's something that me and Professor Miguel were discussing yesterday. Blockchain, unlike other technologies, like we would say Facebook built something, they can handle it themselves, they're using React, sure, fantastic, but you don't need to interact in any other capacity. For us to be able to interact between all of us, if each of us are using different blockchains, it's not the same as the World Wide Web. We can do an HTTP request. There are some protocols that are defined for communication. Even if each server has their own way of processing, there's a baseline of communication, protocols for communication. Instead, what we have is hundreds of chains fighting over who gains most money on the market. And the interoperability is not there. There are some researches, there are some protocols and advances, but it's not really a community of blockchain. It's multiple blockchains fighting each other. And obviously for the perspective of businesses, I think that's one of the main differences. If we get a consortium of companies that builds a solution for supply chain in one specific blockchain, that works. They don't need to interact with another one. But from a user perspective that might be using different services, that's different. The other case, and just a last example, is WeChat. We barely ever talk about Asia. If China implements a centralized currency into WeChat or whatever they built into WeChat, there's billions using that, hundreds of millions using that. We don't have any other thing that will have that kind of impact. And China has already been doing a lot of investigations about centralized currencies because they want to track everything that's happened. And actually the same for everyone else in the financial system. So yeah, that's basically, I think, some of the key challenges before we get into full millions of being onboarded.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a clock saying that we finished, but we have the clock saying that we have 2 minutes. So maybe 30 seconds for each one of you if you want to leave some final message. Well, it's not mandatory, right? So if you just want to say something, whatever wants to go first. Antony?
Yeah, just want to follow up on Martino's last point as well. I think what I'm starting to see is that people are building the solutions and it's, call it blockchain agnostic. So it can be on Ethereum, or it can be on Bitcoin, or it can be on XRP Ledger or whatever. And I think it's that layer of tech build, which is probably a number of people in this room, to actually stop thinking, I have to build it on Ethereum, I have to build it on, and go actually, and the question I asked my tech team with one of the solutions I'll talk about tomorrow, I said, is it agnostic for blockchain? Because that's all I care about. Yes, we're going to launch it on A, but we want B, C, and D. So that then, because we're going down this route, so there's going to be 10, 20, 100 blockchains, I don't know, in the future. But, you know, there's not, it's like, you know, MasterCard and Visa, and there's not many, you know, we end up with 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, so we need to, this middle layer, the apps layer, and well, not the end apps, but the middle sort of where layer, needs to be able to do what it does on different blockchains and still have the same. So yeah, it's immutable on A, B, and C. And it depends, and I think that will help bring that together. So I think there's, you know, a step forward in that. You know, closing sort of thoughts is back to really the, you know, the Trump sort of opening we had. I honestly think, and you know, a week ago, whenever it was, you know, we were sort of getting the results. I was up at 3 a.m. watching the results. The first thing I did was put my phone on, and I saw Bitcoin was pumping. I was like, oh, Trump's won. Before I turned on CNN. Then I turned on CNN and it was like, no, Kamala's going to win, going to win, going to win. Oh, no, no. So it's quite an interesting morning, I have to say, because my crypto's just going up, so I'm just smiling the whole time. But exactly. I mean, you know, the whole Trump thing, I'm not, you know, this is not about Trump himself. This is about what this has just ignited. And somebody who's been doing this for, you know, since 2016, a lot of my friends were like, you know, you're mental, you're crazy doing this, you know. Why are you doing this blockchain? You've got a, you know, a 6-figure salary director, you know, why don't you just carry on the old school route? And I was like, no, I'm doing this. And it's been painful, very painful. But now it feels like finally, annoyingly thanks to Trump, but hey, let's hope all the other governments wake up. It's now an acceptable and a real industry. And the most important thing from that is now the education will start to flow better. You know, if you talk to sort of college students, they all use wallets and things anyway. They don't have this weird, I need paper and the rest of it. So there's a whole generation, 2 or 3 generations now, that actually are embracing this. And I think to onboard billions, let's change that to a B, that's what's going to happen. It's the education side of it, people understanding it. Then obviously the regulator and then the innovation all needs to work together. But innovation is already ahead. Regulation is okay. And I think the education still needs the bit. I think there's still a lot around education that needs to happen. But that can happen quickly. Education is actually quite easy. You know, it's a big scale thing, but it's easier to do. So I think those are the areas that I think are coming together to make this into billions of users.
Okay, thank you. Any more thoughts?
I will just maybe close saying again that regulation is important. Good regulation. No, I think the whole point here that, and again, I'm sorry to bother everyone and annoy everyone with regulation topics, but I think it does have an impact, right? We talked about it today. It shows already. Honestly, I can already see the difference from a year ago when we talked about policy and regulation in this room. There was even less understanding, less enthusiasm to talk about these topics. But once we do, and once we have understood what is happening, then at least we are going to increase trust, and trust from users, trust from regulators, trust from entities and financial institutions and other industries that are going to finally say, okay, you know what, I'm not sure whether the Trump endorsement is just by itself a sign of trust, but generally speaking, at least seeing that that major states around the world are finally taking a clear position in favor of the crypto industry, of blockchain technology being adopted and applied in different ways, then for sure will increase trust also from the user's perspective, and I'm sure we're gonna hopefully have the billion users on blockchain before we have a third Trump mandate. Sorry for that.
So thank you very much, and I'll ask for applause for our 3 panelists. Thank you very much.
Didn't
Are there
want
any
to come
questions?
in, but it's, yes, I thought that the moderator would be doing this, maybe some light in the audience, please. So probably we do have some spare 5 minutes.
Anybody?
To not steal so much from the lunchtime, but so anyone can make any questions. I mean, it's an honor to have this roundtable here, a lot of knowledge as well. Yes, we do have. I know we always have questions. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, we will go back kind of.
Martinho, I thought that it was really interesting, the part of the interoperability part, because blockchain is about collaboration, and what you said is completely antagonic from that point that I'm trying to achieve also. So I completely understand why companies are trying to survive. I think it's the words. But how can we achieve the collaboration that we all need?
So I think from a perspective of the blockchains, we have from an application practice interoperability when we consider layer 1s and layer 2s. So chains actually, we have the solution to get them to communicate and to pass information. But we don't have that basis between different communities, like Solana interacting more properly with Ethereum, for example. If we consider that for them, it would actually be a pro if they are able to say, oh, come building on Solana because it's fully blockchain agnostic solution because you can actually communicate with the other chains. Wouldn't it be better for Solana to be able to say that? Or for any other one of the chains? So part of that comes from the development part to actually strive to not try to innovate without getting a feature that actually adds value, when at the end of the day, what happens is each of the chains that are actually being developed are all chasing each other. Each of them is trying to do one thing different, but then is copying the others. But the only thing missing is the communication. Like what allowed us to have the World Wide Web is that there are protocols that are defined actually from academic background, some of them, others from military background, but that is the difference. So it will happen sooner or later, just a question of when. Otherwise, the only other solution is we only have one chain. And considering that there's active building developments in each, the only way that could happen is if the US and Europe, for example, and China as well, would say, this is the only thing that you can build. And that's unlikely to happen for multiple reasons. So when are we going to be focusing on bridging the gap of communication between different chains? I cannot answer that, but I do think that's the way to go.
Can I just add, there's a change as well afoot around the funding of projects. So until probably 6-12 months ago, you went to Solana to get a grant, no doubt, or to get some incentive, or XRP, or anyone, you name them. And, probably around, was it 2019 to 2021, they were throwing money like literally water flowing down the mountain. It was insane. And don't worry, I spent lots of Ripple's money, sorry everyone, with XRP projects and things. And at the time, and I did it in NEM as well, but you're sat there going, we're just giving money away, we're not asking for things, but it's just build stuff. Go and build it, it's great. I noticed about 6-12 months ago a change where they go, what's the business model? And everyone goes, the what? The business model? What are you talking about? I want to build this widget thing that does this thing, and everyone's going to use this thing. And it's like, no. And we're raising money at the moment, and I've talked to 4 chains in the last 6 months, and they're all asking for the business model, which is great, because I've done one, thank you. But the important thing is, to me, again, this is where this is maturing. This is about business. So I don't care which chain I use. The tech guys can tell me which chain, right? If they pay me, great. If they don't, it's irrelevant. If I need to use XRP, Ledger, Solana for the specific solution because it's the best, then I'm going to use it and I'm going to raise the money externally. So now VCs and everyone are coming on board and going, we'll fund your project as long as you have a business model and use whichever one you want. We don't care. So I've had 2 discussions with stablecoin providers. They were like, don't care who you use. These are the 4 that we think are good. Do what you want. We don't care. And that's amazing in a way because it's now opening up the small businesses, the startups, the innovators to go, right, I don't have to use XRP Ledger because Ripple's paying me. I can use Solana because it's the best one. And that's a big change. And I think you're going to see a wave of it. So it's going to be harder to get money, believe me, but there'll be better solutions and your business will actually make money. So I think it's an amazing change and it's starting to flow through now.
We had another question over there, please.
Hi, so I'm one of these seamless, no knowledge on blockchain whatsoever. And so my first question would be, where would someone like me that doesn't have any information on tech or whatever to get some knowledge, first really basic knowledge about it, and second thing, just to reinforce what Martinho said about usability. I mean, I think we all have this sense that if it's logical that I use it and it has something that adds to it, I'll use it. So this is where I think at the moment, from where I see it, is something like a bit of a dark thing that only really techie guys and geeky guys know about. And this is what I think needs to be addressed, is that it becomes normal and usable, and you see that there's an add-on to it, to your life, to your day-to-day life.
I feel your second question kind of answered the first, or like the way that you were talking about the second question is a great answer to your doubt, like why would someone like you end up using these apps, is the moment in which you realize that this app is easy to use, is not complicated, there is no technical expertise that you need, and it adds value to your life. So it's absolutely true. This is exactly what we're in need right now of this big shift, where we start focusing about what is the value delivered by this service, by this product, by this app, stop talking again about blockchain technology, especially if you are not into, or like if you don't have that initial background and understanding, there is no point in trying to explain you that this is a proof of work network compared to proof of stake, and it's using decentralized identity to obviously there is no point, right? So it just, what you need to know is what's gonna deliver to you. And the first part of your question is how to educate yourself. I think that's both on, I think, the individual, but also on the industry, the associations like mine, but also generally speaking, the policymakers. Again, there needs to be education, there needs to be just generally financial literacy, right? About how to use certain services, how to use certain technologies, certain apps. So there is resources out there. I would obviously recommend to have a look, and there is videos, there is articles, very easy explanations, so a list of the most basic concepts to get at least a bit of an understanding of what is this whole black thing that you're referring to. But then I think there needs to be a lot more work from our side to make sure that these resources are really delivered to everyone, and that users are aware of what they need to be aware, right? Of what is that is going to help them, why they should be using a certain product, what is the risks connected with using a certain products, but then again, letting them know that this product is regulated, authorized, licensed, and so they can trust it and they can get what, this value without any risk. So I hope that answers a bit of your questions. Thank you.
Just to add a quick thing. So we talked a bit about WISE, which was called TransferWise, which is basically a service that value proposition was that it was cheaper and easier to get money from one country to another. That was the biggest point. And there's multiple places that you still go on the street that say, we do remittances and we send money and they were very expensive. But TransferWise was very clear, very transparent. No one asked, how did they build that? No one asked what language did they build that on? What is their team? Like, you just go there, it's so easy, you transfer and they transfer to the destination. To me, that should be the answer for most people, is that you shouldn't need to know about crypto or you shouldn't need to know about blockchain. You go into a service and you get your need done. So if you have a situation where you need to send funds to Brazil or vice versa or to any other country, you should be able to go to a service like Coinbase and do it in a way that you don't need any kind of guideline or communication or to get any course or read any book. That should be the basis for most people. Obviously, for others that want to build on these systems, that want to work on these systems, I think that's where more literacy and more understanding is going to be advantageous. But we cannot expect everyone in the world to know about crypto and blockchain, and that shouldn't be the need at all, because we didn't do the same for anything else. So you go into an application, you log in, and you do what you need to be done because it's so clear, so easy. And right now, the truth is it's not, obviously. And some of that is from struggles because these are technologies that we weren't able to solve until 2009. We didn't know how to build a system like that. But now we can, and now we have other struggles. And a lot of that fraud and issues, because actually it was so simple to build things there, and without any kind of protection, that people could just build something that scammed. And that's something that's changing. And so if we have those things and those solutions, then it will come into a point where there's going to be a few products that are going to be so easy to use and are going to solve real-life cases. Right now, some of them exist, but they are still not there. And I think that's the change.
Just very quickly, so that you can get to lunch. If you want the education, there's a book called Commercializing Blockchain, which you can buy on Amazon and all good bookshops. So that tells you about the real world of blockchain, if you want to go that second level. The other one I do say, and I used to say this back in 2016, and some of my friends are very happy with me for saying this, and I always used to say, if you actually want to understand blockchain and crypto, more the crypto side, go and buy $10 of Ethereum, Bitcoin, etc., etc. Because as soon as you spend your own money on something, you research. Yeah. And you actually learn about it. It's like buying, a stock. Normally you buy, a Tesla stock, and then you go and learn what actually is Tesla, how does it work, etc., or Barclays Bank or whatever. So each of you actually just go and spend €1, it doesn't matter, on Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever you want, doesn't matter. You'll do loads of research, and a lot of my friends did that, and now obviously they're very happy, you know. But it helps because your mindset. If you've invested in it, you're going to do something with it. So slightly different way of looking at it.
I think that's the same way that many of us probably got into this industry, right? Literally 10 euros investment into it. And I was like, let me actually understand what did I spend these 10 euros on. Oh, this is interesting. And that's the rest is history.